Item hash, SCP-457. The Burning Man. Object class, Euclid/Potential Keter. Special containment procedures. SCP-457 is to be kept in a 5 meters by 5 meters chamber with no less than 22.9 centimeters, 9 inches, of cumulative fireproofing via various materials, asbestos cement, perlite boards, upon all surfaces, and a blast-proof observation window with emergency blast shielding installed. The opening to the chamber must consist of at least 2 temperature-controlled and airtight chambers that may be sealed in case of emergency. SCP-457's chamber should be kept at high humidity with a drainage system installed in the floor, as well as a misting sprinkler system installed and running constantly, and emergency hoses capable of at least 2.1 megapascals, 300 pounds per square inch, of water pressure. SCP-457 is allowed a small structure upon the wall of its chamber that remains water-free, but only allows for minimal protection and preservation of form. All personnel entering SCP-457's chamber should be wearing at least Class A temperature-controlled, flame-retardant sealed suits, and enter in groups of 3, with 2 members equipped with high-grade blast shields and emergency fire extinguishers. Personnel should only enter SCP-457's chamber in order to supply SCP-457 with its daily allotment of fuel material, or to examine and repair any damage to the chamber or sprinkler systems. Should SCP-457 engage personnel in a hostile manner, it is to be controlled via emergency extinguishers and hoses until it retreats back to its safe chamber. In the event that SCP-457 breaks containment, emergency sprinkler systems will be triggered and personnel will be supplied with extinguishers and blast shielding. Description: for all points and purposes, SCP-457 appears to be a sentient being composed of flame. SCP-457's actual composition is unknown, and has proven to be invisible and undetectable by any known means, but is shaped out by the flames it produces, often assuming a human-like form if given sufficient fuel to assume that size. SCP-457's most rudimentary form appears to be that of a single flame, comparable in size to that of a matchstick. In this form, SCP-457 possesses only the simplest of directives and shows no signs of being unusual compared to any other flame beyond a penchant for suddenly flickering to burn human hands, and the ability to jump to more flammable materials or other flames, which it then assimilates into its total form. As SCP-457 grows larger, it is able to assume more complex shapes, and its intelligence grows with size and fuel sources. SCP-457's method of intelligence is unknown, but upon reaching an approximately human size, SCP-457 almost always assumes a human-like form surrounded by and composed of flames. SCP-457 has been observed to communicate through writing letters out of its own flames, charring them onto the wall or other surfaces, and more rarely through speech, created via high-pressure, superheated air and the crackling and pops of flames. Once SCP-457 reaches an unknown threshold of size and fuel source, SCP-457 splits into 2 beings, and so on so forth. However, multiple beings of SCP-457 are aggressive towards each other, and will either attempt to consume or extinguish their doubles, especially if there is only a limited amount of fuel at hand. SCP-457's behavior is largely predictable, as its goals are simply to acquire larger sources of fuel and to spread. The danger of SCP-457 comes from its ability to increase intelligence with size, and apparent ability to learn and mimic behaviors. This has led to it purposely damaging and sabotaging sprinkler systems and, in rare circumstances, set up relatively complex traps. It has also attempted to trick or reason with personnel to be released or have access to more fuel. Due to SCP-457's unique composition, variable intelligence, and uncooperative nature, its psychology may not be accurately determined in accordance with any human analogy. SCP-457 was recovered in the summer of 2007, after multiple wildfires were attributed to it. It is unknown where or how SCP-457 initially formed. Investigation into the potential of SCP-457 being responsible for other major fires is underway.
Item hash, SCP-3014 Lonely Hungry Demon. Object Class, Safe Euclid. Special Containment Procedures. SCP-3014 is to be stored in a 8 meter by 8 meter by 5 meter containment cell at Site-15. SCP-3014 is to be given access to controlled Wi-Fi content for 3 hours a day. At least 4 Level 4 Foundation IT specialists are to control the exact contents of the data packets sent to SCP-3014. Any information packets being sent to SCP-3014 are to be analyzed for any information that is important and could cause issues if lost. Every week, SCP-3014 is to interview to regain potential lost information. In the event that SCP-3014 does not receive proper information, all forms of Internet access within 100 meters of SCP-3014 and its cell are to be destroyed. The content to be given to SCP-3014 is to be automatically generated fictional stories generated by AI sources. Stories are to not contain any important information relating to science, history, culture, or any other well-known concept in case an antimemetic event occurs. As of Incident 3014-3, at least 2 guards armed with light explosive weaponry are to remain near SCP-3014 and its cell at all times. Personnel are not to be allowed to communicate with SCP-3014 unless given permission by the current lead researcher on duty for SCP-3014. Bi-monthly, SCP-3014 is to be given a psychological evaluation by the current lead researcher of SCP-3014. Any requests for extra equipment capable of sending or receiving signals is to be denied without review. The use of SCP-3014 to contain digital anomalies, specifically memetic, is under consideration. Description: SCP-3014 is a sapient hexapod robotic construct of unknown origin. The entity's body is segmented into 3 separate spherical pieces, each roughly with a diameter of 0.5 meters and 2 legs that are approximately 2 meters long at full extension. The entity possesses a rear antenna of a design beyond current understanding. It appears similar to human designs, however near the tip of the antenna is a large crystal of unknown composition that seems to be fractured in half. Sampling proves the crystal structure to be similar to that of diamond. According to SCP-3014, it is broken, and previously could broadcast information faster than light, but this has not been confirmed. Analysis of the antenna for replication for Foundation use is being considered. SCP-3014 was recovered after several hundred residents of UK reported weak internet connection. When civilian internet service providers investigated, they discovered SCP-3014. Foundation agents in the area took over, and discovered SCP-3014 was attempting to construct a form of communication array but was lacking the needed tools and parts. The entity was forcefully contained. Damage and internet outages were later blamed on a severe storm, and amnestics were properly distributed. The frontmost segment of SCP-3014 is considered the head of the entity. Sticking out of the head is a small square screen about 1 meter long. The entity uses this to communicate. SCP-3014 is composed of an unknown material. Due to the extreme strength and density of the material, sampling and internal imaging has proven difficult. The tests that have been performed show similarities to carbon nanotubes, although of a much more advanced design. SCP-3014 appears to take in information that is in the form of wireless internet networking. SCP-3014 claims that it consumes this data. The entity requires roughly 500 megabytes of data per 24 hours to preserve normal function. The information that SCP-3014 consumes is memorized and permanently stored. SCP-3014 has learned, from internet access, human language and grammar to a high degree. However, the entity prefers to type in short incomplete sentences because, according to the entity, it is more comfortable to speak as it is similar to its original language. Upon consumption of data, there is an estimated 56% chance that the data gains temporary antimemetic properties. SCP-3014 claims that this is digestion problems. The majority of sapient beings who know the content, being video, audio, text or otherwise, begin to forget it and suffer extreme difficulty trying to remember the data if shown again. In rare cases, digitally stored versions of this content will be completely deleted or expunged. This effect will last anytime from 16 hours to months. In emergency situations, SCP-3014 can consume stored content. If this occurs, the antimemetic effects are permanent, and extend to SCP-3014 itself. The content of the data that SCP-3014 has consumed is relevant. SCP-3014 claims that data that reveals more important or interesting information is more tasty and that uninteresting data is bland and tasteless. SCP-3014 refuses to consume data that is a repeat of previous information or very similar to previous information, claiming it to be disgusting. If SCP-3014 does not receive its required information, it may begin to attempt to forcefully consume information, breaking through information firewalls with relative ease. When this occurs, the rate of antimemetic events increases to 90%, as well as the duration appearing unlimited. It is unknown if this has ever occurred, or if, redacted. Additional effects of this are unknown due to information loss. If the entity has not been fed for an extended amount of time, information that SCP-3014 has consumed may begin to reappear. However, this information will still be antimemetic. In addition, data stored near this antimemetic information may also begin to take on antimemetic qualities, which can spread. This can be solved by deleting the information, but this can prove difficult due to the nature of antimemetics. Item hash, SCP-3001. Red Reality. Object Class, Euclid. Special Containment Procedures. To prevent further accidental entries into SCP-3001, all Foundation reality bending technology will be upgraded/modified with multiple newly developed safeguards to prevent Class C broken entry wormhole creation. While knowledge of SCP-3001 is available to personnel of any level should they wish to learn about it, research and experimentation with SCP-3001 and its associated technology is strictly limited to personnel of Level 3 and above, with special clearance designation granted from Sites 120, 121, 124, and 133. Description: SCP-3001 is a hypothesized paradoxical parallel/pocket non-dimension accessible through the creation of a momentary Class C broken entry wormhole. 1 While believed to be an infinitely extending parallel universe, SCP-3001 is almost completely devoid of any matter and has an extremely low Hume level of 0.032,2, contradicting Cain's laws of reality with the relation between Humes and spacetime. This phenomenon causes matter inside it to decay at an extremely low rate, and damage that would otherwise prove fatal does not impede any biological/electronic function. Simulations suggest an organism can lose more than 70% of their body's tissue and still operate normally, as long as at least 40% of the brain remains. However, prolonged exposure will cause said matter to gradually approach SCP-3001's own Hume level, resulting in severe tissue/structural damage as the matter's own Hume field begins to disintegrate. SCP-3001 was initially discovered on January 2, 2000, at Site 120, a facility dedicated to testing and containing reality-bending technology. Dr. Robert Scranton and his wife Dr. Anna Lang were head researchers at Site-120, and were developing an experimental device, called the Lang-Scranton Stabilizer, LSS. Dr. Scranton was transported to SCP-3001 after unexpected seismic activity damaged several active LSS in Site-120 Reality Lab A. Initially presumed dead, Dr. Scranton has survived in SCP-3001 for at least 5 years, 11 months, and 21 days. During this time, he was able to record his experiences and observations within SCP-3001 through a somehow still functioning LSS control panel, which was also brought into SCP-3001 with him through the Class C broken entry wormhole. These recordings were later recovered upon the panel's sudden return, an unexpected side effect from testing improved reality bending technology. These logs are the basis of SCP-3001 study. Despite new technologies being developed, retrieval and reintegration of Dr. Scranton has been unsuccessful. His current physical and mental states, if he is still alive, are unknown.
Item Hash, SCP-253. The Cancer Plague. Object Class, Euclid. Special Containment Procedures. At this time, SCP-253 poses a substantial threat to humanity. SCP-253 is to be kept under Biosafety Level 4 protocols at all times. All research is to be conducted at a site where incineration and irradiation protocols can be swiftly enacted, that is geographically isolated, and does not possess a diverse biosphere. The sterilization protocols shall be enacted following the occurrence of any event on this list. Communications blackout lasting longer than 48 hours. Power disruption lasting longer than 1 minute during any active experiments involving SCP-253. Abnormal rise in average temperatures beyond a change of 6 degrees Celsius, 11 degrees Fahrenheit, or rise in humidity levels to 90% relative humidity. Manifestations of unusual electromagnetic phenomena during testing of SCP-253. At the conclusion of testing, any subjects exposed to SCP-253 are to be disposed of, and their remains are subject to the sterilization protocol. Any researcher leaving the facility is to undergo 2 weeks of mandatory chemotherapy, followed by a 15-day quarantine. Description: SCP-253 is a cluster of undifferentiated human cells, matching the physiological traits of cancer. As per cancerous cells, cultured samples of SCP-253 will grow indefinitely if given an adequate source of nutrition. SCP-253 is contagious, able to pass from human to human, as well as to some animal species. SCP-253 is not an airborne contagion, but physical contact with surface neoplasms on infected subjects will spread the plague. The first sign of SCP-253 infection is the emergence of skin lesions, typically dime-sized, 2 cm in diameter, in groups of 3 to 5, at the site of infection. Within 12 hours after the appearance of the lesions, MRI scans show the development of neoplasms within the brain. At this time, the neoplasms do not induce neurological symptoms. Over the next 24 to 48 hours, numerous skin lesions start to emerge and grow in size. These lesions often induce substantial swelling in surrounding tissue, which can be quite painful for the subject. Often, the pain, if left untreated, leaves many subjects unable to move. Towards the end of the 48-hour period, neoplasms start to emerge in the lymphatic system and neurological symptoms start to manifest. The neurological symptoms of SCP-253 are different for each patient, depending on which part of the brain the invasive cells have contaminated, with one exception. Each human patient heretofore exposed to SCP-253 has felt a complete cessation of pain 47 to 49 hours after infection. Other neurological symptoms include inability to focus attention, disorganized speech, memory loss, hallucinations, euphoria, megalomania, inappropriate emotional responses, sociopathy, catatonia. The neoplasms do not seem to respond to radiation, and chemotherapy with high-dose mitoxantrone, irinotecan, and dacarbazine has only minimal effects. Chemotherapy was observed to kill some cells and markedly slow the growth of others, and therefore might be useful for post-exposure prophylaxis, but is ineffective in established disease. If the mass of cancerous cells within a population does not reach a biomass threshold of approximately 1,400 kilograms, 1,400 kilograms/3,100 pounds, the cells will overwhelm the host within 5 days, resulting in death. If not transferred to a new host, the cancer cells will consume any remaining usable biomass of the host's corpse before finally running out of resources and dying. However, if the mass of cancer cells within a population reaches the threshold, electromagnetic phenomena will start to manifest. The sources of these phenomena appear to be the infected hosts, but the mechanism of the M manipulation is not understood at this time. Furthermore, it appears the M emanations facilitate some sort of communication between the hosts. Coordinated in some fashion by the neoplasms, the hosts start to act as one entity spread through many bodies. The intelligence of this entity is initially animalistic and reactive. As the intelligence of the Gestalt entity is believed to be based on the remaining brain tissue within the hosts, it is hypothesized that the entity may be able to achieve human-like intelligence. The events from Incident I.J77.82 appear to support this hypothesis, and research suggests that some of the more unsettling things seen at hospital are manifestations of this intellect. Until suitable methods can be created to jam the M transmissions of the end-stage infection entity, and until efficacious treatment alternatives for the diseases known as cancer enters common usage, the utmost care must be taken with samples of SCP-253.
Item hash, SCP-173. The sculpture. Object class, Euclid. Special containment procedures. Item SCP-173 is to be kept in a locked container at all times. When personnel must enter SCP-173's container, no fewer than 3rd may enter at any time and the door is to be relocked behind them. At all times, 2 persons must maintain direct eye contact with SCP-173 until all personnel have vacated and relocked the container. Description: Moved to Site 1993. Origin is as of yet unknown. It is constructed from concrete and rebar with traces of Krylon brand spray paint. SCP-173 is animate and extremely hostile. The object cannot move while within a direct line of sight. Line of sight must not be broken at any time with SCP-173. Personnel assigned to enter container are instructed to alert one another before blinking. Object is reported to attack by snapping the neck at the base of the skull, or by strangulation. In the event of an attack, personnel are to observe Class 4 hazardous object containment procedures. Personnel report sounds of scraping stone originating from within the container when no one is present inside. This is considered normal, and any change in this behavior should be reported to the acting HMCL supervisor on duty. The reddish-brown substance on the floor is a combination of feces and blood. Origin of these materials is unknown. The enclosure must be cleaned on a bi-weekly basis.
Item hash, SCP-166. Just a teenage Gia. Object class, Euclid. Special containment procedures. SCP-166 is contained in Biocontainment Zone C at Site 19, which has been modified to include a hermetically sealed antechamber and an industrial-strength air purifier. Containment staff must wear the specially designated 166 biohazard suits at all times when inside SCP-166's containment area. Due to SCP-166's unique physiological needs, a variety of loose-fitting organic cotton clothing has been provided, to be rotated monthly. All meals are to be cooked according to the guidelines provided, with as little inorganic additives as possible. Reasonable requests for personal items and modifications to the containment suite may be granted upon approval by a Level 4 or higher authority. Update: all requests by SCP-166 must be approved personally by Site Director Light. To date, SCP-166 has requested a copy of the Holy Bible, Douay Reims, Challoner revision. Granted. A Catholic Rosary. Granted. Access to a Catholic priest for confession, Mass, and other sacraments. Denied. Chaplain Davis has been scheduled to meet with SCP-166 on alternating Sundays after a thorough decontamination process. Various books and magazines, mostly religious in nature. Granted, pending review and approval of contents. A telephone with which to contact the Abbess of the Our Lady of Mercy Convent in County Galway, Ireland, denied. Granted. Overruled by order of the Site Director, denied. Description: SCP-166 is a European female human in its late teens with ungulate features, possessing antlers, hoofed feet, and a short tail reminiscent of Rangifer tarandus, common reindeer. Despite these obvious abnormalities, DNA analysis reveals no abnormal genetic traits. Within a 15-meter radius of SCP-166, artificial objects gradually return to an unworked state. Higher complexity objects like electronics or vehicles are affected quicker, with degradation of their metallic components causing catastrophic structural failure in a matter of hours. Rudimentary materials, such as stone buildings or products made of organic materials, decay at a virtually imperceptible rate. Within the same radius, plant life will begin to sprout, often growing in improbable places such as out of security cameras or ID scanners. SCP-166 possesses a possibly anomalous sensitivity to artificial material and pollutants, with inhalation or contact causing pressure ulcers and symptoms of acute asthma attacks. In one case, physical proximity to a smoker caused SCP-166 to undergo a severe asthma attack, even though the doctor at the time had not smoked a cigarette for 3 weeks. Discovery: SCP-166 was discovered at the Our Lady of Mercy Convent in County Galway, Ireland, where it had lived since infancy. SCP-166 was confirmed by a defecting Global Occult Coalition agent to be the child of Threat Entity 9927 Black, the goddess, also known as SCP, who was terminated by a Gawk strike team in what would be known as the Cornwall Incident. Recovered Gawk documentation. The agent had refused to terminate SCP-166, instead smuggling it to a Catholic convent in County Galway, Ireland. It lived there until the age of 12, at which point a visitor to the convent accidentally witnessed SCP-166 and reported it to authorities. The agent then contacted the Foundation, agreeing to share Gawk intelligence in return for the guaranteed safety and containment of SCP-166. Further details are classified.
Item hash, SCP-149. The Blood Flies. Object Class, Keter. Special Containment Procedures. SCP-149 in any of its instances is to be kept inside a sealed plexiglass box for observation. Oxygen and a nutrient mist are to be released into the containment cell every 2 hours. If any instance of SCP-149 escapes its cell, Protocol 42 Charlie is to be brought into effect on any and all contaminated personnel, by order of 0512, after Incident 149-1. Description: SCP-149 is a breed of mosquito which carries a strain of retrovirus, herein referred to as SCP-149-A, that mutates regenerating human cells into fertilized mosquito eggs. SCP-149-A is injected directly into the bloodstream when SCP-149 feeds. The SCP-149-A quickly works on the nucleus of the cells, warping the DNA. The first set of cells bred from these changed instructions closely resemble cysts, and are concentrated in the lining of the esophagus and the sinuses. Upon dissection, however, these cysts are revealed to be filled with SCP-149's larvae, the cysts acting as a protective casing against external forces. SCP-149 appears to go through its maturation cycle in a matter of hours. By the time the subject is able to feel any effects, the first generation of SCP-149 has already grown inside the subject's body. SCP-149 primarily achieves exodus through the mouth and nostrils, occasionally being diverted through the sphenoid sinuses to escape through the eye sockets. Infection by SCP-149 is fatal, and chance of infection has been estimated to be 50% from one bite. Addendum. Incident 149-1, an incidence of SCP-149 escaped and infected multiple Class D subjects, the majority of whom did not report SCP-149's contact with them. Within 5 hours, SCP-149 had matured in these hosts and burst out of them, infecting staff. It was only thanks to the quick thinking of Dr. who sealed sub-levels 12 through 15, that the entire site was not infected. As a response to this, O5 Command has created Protocol 42 Charlie, to be used if SCP-149 escapes confinement.
Item hash, SCP-134. Star-Eyed Child. Object Class, Safe. Special Containment Procedures. SCP-134 is currently contained within a specially outfitted humanoid containment cell, measuring 6 meters by 8 meters. Since SCP-134 is completely blind, special safety precautions must be taken with the room's furnishings. SCP-134 is reasonably accustomed to the position of all objects in the cell and navigates mostly from memory. SCP-134's room currently contains 1 single bed with additional mattress padding, 1 pink bed set including sheets, comforter, and pillow with Hello Kitty mascot print. Note, though blind, SCP-134 is able to feel the printed pattern and prefers it. 1 wardrobe and 1 chest of drawers containing clothes in youth extra small. All drawers are to be labeled in Braille and raised print English. 1 dollhouse with dolls and interior furnishings. 8 stuffed animals, 3 cats, 2 dogs, a giraffe, a dolphin, and a panda. A selection of children's literature in Braille. 1 chair and 1 table. A craft station with modeling clay and building blocks. SCP-134 may request additional items, all of which must be approved by a staff member with Level 3 clearance or higher. If any items are added to the room, SCP-134's handlers must be informed ahead of time to prepare her for the addition of something new to the environment. SCP-134 is to be tutored on a regular basis both in general education appropriate for the subject's age and in Braille. Description: SCP-134 seems to be an Asian girl between the ages of and, with short black hair and a slight build. The subject seems normal in most respects and has all the biological requirements of a human child: food, sleep, etc. However, where SCP-134's eyes should be are 2 black pits, covered by a transparent membrane similar in appearance to a human eye's membrane. Ophthalmological testing has shown that the membranes are between 150 and 200 times more resilient than those of a normal, non-anomalous human. SCP-134 lacks eyelids and thus does not blink, nor can SCP-134 see anything through these black areas. Attempts to examine the back of SCP-134's eyeball have failed, as no retina can be seen. In normal lighting conditions, they appear completely black, but in darkness, very faint lights have been seen within them. Further study with long exposure photography and light amplification revealed that the lights are actually stars and galaxies, visible as though SCP-134's eye sockets are somehow looking out into deep space. To date, no astronomical formations have been recognized, though research by staff astronomer Dr. is ongoing. Sonar examination has revealed no unusual cavities within SCP-134's skull. However, data expunged, confirming the presence of data expunged, eye sockets being the local termini and intergalactic space being the remote termini. Parallax measurements indicate that the remote termini are between 20 and 2000 meters apart, and are moving at between 20 and 40 times the speed of light. This does not appear to be linked to SCP-134's position, movement, or metabolism. Spectrographic analysis indicates that the remote termini periodically, data expunged, new location, the cause of this is not yet known. The shortest interval measured between shifts was 6 days, while the longest was 5 weeks. As of yet, no termini shifts have been observed in progress. SCP-134 has not shown any hostile behavior, and seems unaware of any unnatural condition. SCP-134 shows behavioral symptoms similar to those seen in high-functioning autistic children, including patterned behavior and resistance to change. As such, SCP-134 has been assigned a childhood development specialist to help work with these issues. The specialist has suggested that proper childhood development requires a personal name, and has nicknamed SCP-134 Stella. SCP-134 has learned to associate being referred to by her SCP number with being subjected to physical tests, and becomes upset and less cooperative when this is done by individuals who have previously referred to her as Stella. Consequently, personnel are urged to not refer to her by name unless they wish their interactions with SCP-134 to be limited to interview sessions. The specialist has since been terminated from employment for taking too close an interest in the SCPs assigned to him. Any staff found referring to SCP-134 as Stella will be severely reprimanded. When questioned about her eyes, SCP-134 claims no knowledge of any deformation, even when allowed to feel normal human eyes for comparison. SCP-134 has to date volunteered no information about parentage or identity, though when acquired by the Foundation, SCP-134 was called. SCP-134 has proven docile and cooperative, and as such staff should display all the normal courtesy they would to any other guest. SCP-134 was taken into Foundation custody based on reports of a deformed child left at the orphanage in Yokohama, Japan. SCP-134 has been in Foundation custody since 20, at which time orphanage staff claimed SCP-134 was years old. Since then, SCP-134 has learned conversational English, in addition to the Japanese already known, and has demonstrated facility with Braille, though instruction is ongoing.
Item hash, SCP-122. No more monsters. Object class, Kita. Special containment procedures. SCP-122 is to be stored in a standard containment chamber, containing a single electrical outlet. No personnel dormitories are to be constructed within 500 m of the containment area. At no time should SCP-122 enter an unpowered state. Several redundant power systems are to be maintained and inspected regularly. In the event of SCP-122-1 manifestation, 35 members of site personnel assigned to enact containment are to be deployed outside the containment chamber. If it becomes hostile, Procedure 99 Renma is to be enacted. Due to the potentially disastrous side effects in the event of cross-contamination, at no point are SCP-122 and instances of SCP-3060 to be stored at the same facility. To enact Procedure 99 Renma, all subjects are to assume specific positions in and around the containment chamber, in order to prevent a containment breach. 2 subjects are to man a portable generator, with which the equipment used in Procedure 99 Renma is powered. 3 subjects are to be equipped with chemical irritants created as a byproduct of SCP-1837, which has been found to have an inhibitory effect on SCP-122-1 instances. After all instances of SCP-122-1 have been reduced to the point where entry is safe, 5 subjects are to enter the containment chamber and use an electrical extension cord from the generator to return SCP-122 to a powered state. These personnel are to be considered irrecoverable after entering SCP-122's containment chamber, due to its effect. The remaining personnel are redundant. They will take the place of any incapacitated personnel. Description: SCP-122 is a children's nightlight in the design of a stylized shooting star. When it is in a powered state, SCP-122 lets off between 14 to 20 lux. No manufacturer's mark is present on or within SCP-122's components. When in an unpowered state, SCP-122 will affect all subjects within a 500 m radius of its location. When the subjects enter IM sleep, they will move into a comatose state in which they will remain until SCP-122 is resupplied with power. While comatose, humanoid figures appearing to be composed of a black, slightly translucent mass will appear from any shadows around the subject. These figures are hereafter known as instances of SCP-122-1. Instances of SCP-122-1 exhibit signs of sapience and sentience, with physical abilities roughly equivalent to the affected subjects. They will attempt to locate as many human subjects as possible and expose them to SCP-122's effect. As more subjects are affected by SCP-122, its radius of effect will expand, with the maximum range seen in testing being over 2.7 kilometers. The SCP-122-1 instances will attempt to gather all sleep aids within the area of effect and apply them to the subjects. These objects have included insomnia medication, traditional medicines known to be used as treatment with insomniacs, pillows, blankets, mattresses and bed frames, media such as lullabies. When in a powered state, SCP-122 will affect the sleep patterns of all subjects within its radius. If a subject awakens from a state of IM sleep while within SCP-122's radius, they will display signs of insomnia, and will complain of unusual dreams. 1. These dreams have been found to cause minor psychological disturbances, and all personnel should be given weekly psychological evaluations. See Incident 122-1. SCP-122 was discovered within the Linnell Children's Hospital after several reports of SCP-122-1 manifestations reached locally embedded agents. When the area was investigated, it was found that all subjects within the building had been affected by SCP-122. Recovered documents indicate that a patient brought SCP-122 when being admitted. However, no record of the patient's identity has been found. Agents secured SCP-122 with a portable power source, and it was transported to Site-19. Addendum 122-B. SCP-122 reclassified to Kita following Incident 122-1. Moved to Armed Reliquary Containment Area 02. Incident 122-1. On 11 instances of SCP-122-1 breached containment, causing the death of over members of site personnel and casualties. Following recontainment operations, SCP-122's containment procedures were put under review. During this review, security footage of several maintenance personnel tampering with SCP-122's chamber lock was discovered. When questioned, the subjects claimed that they had done so under duress, saying that a canary was not allowing them to sleep until they released SCP-122. Affected subjects were given Class A amnestics, and containment procedures were revised. Upgrade to Kita requested.
Item hash SCP-111 Dragon Snails. Object Class Safe. Special Containment Procedures. All specimens of SCP-111 in captivity are housed at Site 19, Wing, in a 5 meters by 5 meters by 5 meters plexiglass enclosure containing a temperate forest habitat transplanted from its natural surroundings. Habitat temperature will be maintained at 30 degrees Celsius. Feeding is to take place weekly by personnel placing 3 kg of iceberg lettuce, Lactuca sativa, into the containment chamber. Water is to be supplied by an automatic misting system, which regulates humidity levels at 50%, both for water required by SCP-111 and to prevent fires. In event of SCP-111 specimens breeding, personnel are to collect all eggs and transport them to the Biological Studies Wing for freezing. Description: SCP-111 is an apparently artificial species of invertebrate vaguely resembling snails. Adult specimens of SCP-111 are approximately 20 cm in length, 12 cm in width, and 15 cm in height, although exact size differs slightly between specimens. SCP-111 specimens differ from ordinary snails in that they have a warm-blooded metabolism, complex eyes, small horns consisting of cartilage-ridged tentacles, apparently increased intelligence. Personnel are requested to read test log for examples, and a complex vertebrate-type jaw structure. As well, specimens lay eggs possessing hardened shells. Most abnormally, SCP-111 specimens possess small hollow sacs below their lower jaws containing methane from digestive byproducts. A series of data expunged along the inside of the trachea serves as a lighter igniting stored methane as the specimen exhales, blowing a small jet of flame from its mouth. Said fire breathing generally occurs in event of stress or anger, although is not apparently used deliberately for destruction but rather as a warning. This is presumably due to the limited size of methane sacs, which limits SCP-111 specimens in the amount of fire they can exhale at a time, and requiring both time and starch-rich food to refuel. SCP-111's behavior is inconsistent with that of ordinary snail species, including whistling and hooting vocalizations easily audible to humans, high intellect seen in such tests as data expunged, and parents caring for their young. Hatchlings have been observed imprinting on their parents, other members of their own species or researchers. This is presumed to be a deliberate trait based on Document 111A, as it means that hatchlings imprint upon owners. History: a package containing 12 SCP-111 eggs and Document 111A was mailed to, data expunged, a Foundation front organization. Mobile Task Force Alpha 4 have proven unable to locate the sender of said package.
Item hash, SCP-095. The Atomic Adventures of Ronnie Ray Gun. Object Class, Safe. Special Containment Procedures, SCP-095 is to be placed in a standard polyethylene sleeve when not under scheduled research and stored in a standard locked filing cabinet to prevent damage or wear. High-resolution digital scans are available for any Level 1 and above personnel who wish to view SCP-095. Description: SCP-095 appears to be a set of 3 moderately aged black and white comic books printed in 1932. The front and rear covers are missing and several pages have been rendered illegible due to water damage. It was found by agent in a small antique shop in Denver, Colorado, and purchased for a small fee without incident. The owner of the shop had apparently not read the item past the publisher's date on the first page. Forensic inspections of SCP-095 have revealed it to be genuine, though completely unremarkable save for its content. It is printed on cheap pulp paper and inked with dyes common to other publications of its era. The publisher's stamp indicates it was produced by Future Funnies, a company operating out of the town of Purple Lake, Ohio. All research and inquiries thus far have shown both the company and the town to be completely non-existent. The comic itself is a pulp science fiction story entitled The Atomic Adventures of Ronnie Ray Gun, featuring a lead character bearing an unmistakable resemblance to former United States President Ronald Reagan. Each story opens with a large panel reading in the far-fetched future world of the 1980s, only Ronnie Ray Gun can save the day. It appears to follow an episodic format with one self-contained story per publication. The 3 stories are briefly described below. Ronnie vs. Space Admiral Carter. This story pits planetary governor Ronnie Reagan and his sidekick Space Major Herbert against the titular Space Admiral Carter as they both vie for the position of Space Marshal. The events loosely follow the events of the 1980 presidential election. Space Assassin. This story follows a character named Spaceman Hinckley as he prepares to assassinate Space Marshal Reagan. He manages to catch Reagan by surprise and wound him with his devastator ray before being subdued by Reagan's soldiers. The events obviously refer to the 1981 assassination attempt by John Hinckley Jr. Jungle Planet. This story follows Reagan's attempts to create an army of robots on the jungle-covered planet of Nika in order to protect it from the evil sand bandits. Although Reagan is told that he will lose his command if he interferes with events on planet Nika, he sends his lieutenant, Space Colonel West, to secretly build a force under the cover of the jungle. When their plan is discovered, Space Colonel West publicly takes the blame and saves his superior. The storyline appears to be a simplified retelling of the Iran-Contra controversies of 1986. Possibly most interesting is the final page of each book, which advertises other stories published by Future Funnies. Investigation is underway to locate any surviving copies at once. The advertised stories are listed below. Space Major Herbert assumes command. Starman Willie vs. the Space Succubus. Globe Walker in Sneak Attack. Barry Beetlejuice on Planet Afghar. Diamond Donnie and Puddin on the Ritz. Sky Marm Sarah of the Ice World. Flying Franken vs. Rocket Rush. Star Command Proton in a losing battle. The New Menace, Death to Mankind. Personal log of Dr. Date, October 6, 2004. I don't think I need to emphasize how important it is to recover any and all of the advertised stories immediately, the final 2 in particular.
SCP-092, the best of the 5th dimension. Object Class, Safe. Special Containment Procedures. The 3,125 instances of SCP-092 are to be held in individual cases suitable for containing non-anomalous audio compact discs, CDs, and stored in standard inanimate object lockers at Site-37. Each instance is to be individually numbered with permanent marker. Testing of instances of SCP-092 is to be done in soundproof rooms. Only one instance of SCP-092 may be examined at a time. Only D-Class personnel are to listen to previously unexamined instances of SCP-092. Research proposals which involve non-D-Class personnel listening to instances of SCP-092 require written approval from Site Command. The cadaver of SCP-092-B is not currently considered anomalous except by association, and is preserved in the morgue freezer at Site-19. Description: SCP-092 is a set of 3,125 audio CDs, each labeled the absolute best of the 5th dimension, and marked with the names of the 31 performers who have at various times been part of the American singing group The 5th Dimension. Each instance of SCP-092, when played in a standard CD player, will produce a distinct anomalous effect upon all individuals within hearing range. The anomalous phenomenon will last 74 minutes, the duration of a standard audio CD, during which time listeners will be unable to leave hearing range, or to shut off the CD player or otherwise interrupt its function. As well, when the anomalous phenomenon finishes, all surviving listeners will engage in synchronized vocalization of the phrase "Wow, that was real cool," synchronized vocalization has been observed in non-Anglophones, preverbal infants, unconscious individuals, paralyzed individuals, and individuals physically incapable of speech due to laryngeal, lingual, and/or buccal damage. The anomalous properties of each instance of SCP-092 are thematically and conceptually linked to the number 5, dimensions, and/or the members of the fifth dimension. As of //871 instances of SCP-092 have been assessed and their anomalous properties formally described. See document 092W83 for a full list, or below for a representative sample. Representative sample of documented anomalous properties of instances of SCP-092. When an instance of SCP-092 is inserted into the CD drive of a personal computer, its files can be accessed without triggering the anomalous effects. Examination of the files indicates that each CD has different content. All content is audio material by or pertaining to the fifth dimension and its individual members. In addition to all known commercially released songs, files contain live performances, practice sessions, auditions, media interviews, and personal conversations. Acquisition log. On May 5, an unidentified man, henceforth SCP-092-B, carrying 2 suitcases approached front gate guards at Site 19, and stated that he wished to surrender himself and his anomalous creations into Foundation custody. The contents of his suitcases were confiscated, and classed as SCP-092. SCP-092-B was transferred to Site 37 for interrogation. During interrogation, SCP-092-B revealed the thematic connections, 5 dimensions, and the 5th dimension, between all instances of SCP-092, and then committed suicide. Access requires Level 4 security clearance or higher.
Item hash, SCP-088. The Lizard King. Object class, safe. Special containment procedures. SCP-088 is to remain sealed in its airtight case at all times. The case is constructed of transparent acrylic plastic to resist the corrosive properties of SCP-088's secretions. In the event that SCP-088 should awaken from hibernation, any room that it is stored within should be constructed of durable plastics, rubber or ceramics to hinder its ability to escape. Temperature of SCP-088's containment should not exceed 15 degrees Celsius, and any personnel entering containment must observe Level 4 hazardous material protocols and wear the appropriate protective gear at all times. Any personnel who do not observe proper containment protocols in presence of SCP-088 or who show signs of physical mutation are to be demoted to D class and held for observation. Description: SCP-088 is a humanoid with reptilian features which appears to have been mummified in a languid posture. However, SCP-088 is merely in a state of hibernation from which it may recover if it is again exposed to a more hospitable environment than its current containment. Research has indicated that SCP-088 is approximately 6,000 years old and is capable of secreting a variety of hazardous biological compounds from its mouth and hands. Some of these substances could be of great strategic value if replicated, but until a means to extract them without awakening SCP-088 is found, research into this area is on hold. SCP-088 was recovered with the mummified remains of 23 beings sharing a similar morphology. However, none of these beings were alive and examination suggests that they were originally human. Information obtained by Agents E-0883 and E-0887 and their subsequent mutation due to SCP-088 exposure corroborates this theory. Addendum: SCP-088 was recovered in 193 from a subterranean complex below Los Angeles, California. The site was originally discovered by G.W.S. using a device he called a radio X-ray, which was little more than a mechanical dowsing rod. While S's methods were dubious, his discovery was not. After mapping a series of tunnels and gold deposits below the city, S declared that he had found the lost city of the lizard people as described in the legends of Arizona's Hopi tribe. S's claims went as far as to be featured on the front page of the Los Angeles Times on January 29, 1934, before the Foundation was able to verify his claims and silence Mr. S. The subterranean complex was not nearly as extensive as described in legend, and most of the artifacts recovered within were too corroded to provide significant information, save for a long message carved into the rock wall of an unfinished tunnel. For partial translation of this text, see document 088-14. Containment Breach Overview. In more than 70 years of containment, SCP-088 has only roused from its state of hibernation twice, breaching containment with a caustic fluid that dissolves most minerals and metals. Each time multiple personnel were exposed to a second compound which SCP-088 uses to propagate itself, affected personnel underwent a painful mutation after which they shared the physical characteristics of SCP-088. Those few who received a large dosage of the compound, administered directly via mouth-to-mouth contact, or changed the fastest and subsequently sacrificed themselves to protect SCP-088 from harm. SCP-088 has also demonstrated the ability to produce potent neurotoxins in liquid and gaseous form to combat containment personnel. Containment during the second breach was re-achieved by isolating SCP-088 and affected personnel in the facility and lowering the temperature. Affected personnel built a pedestal from discarded equipment, upon which SCP-088 took a recumbent position before slipping back into hibernation. The mutated personnel were neutralized at this point and SCP-088 was returned to containment. The current strategy of lowered temperature and non-metallic containment has been successful in keeping SCP-088 isolated. SCP-088 was reclassified to safe status on November 19.
Item hash, SCP-073. CAIN. Object Class, Euclid. Special Containment Procedures. SCP-073 is to be kept in a 2-room cell furnished with all non-organic furniture and items, and a bathroom. Subject is allowed to freely wander the facility and eat in the main canteen. A tracking device has been attached to SCP-073's person and is not to be removed. Subject is disallowed any contact with the surface, and is not allowed outside the facility. Subject is allowed no contact with plant-based SCPs under any circumstances. Violence is not to be used against SCP-073 under any circumstances. SCP-073 is currently kept in Site-17. Description: SCP-073 appears to be a heavily tanned male of Arabic or Middle Eastern descent in his early 30s, 185 cm, 6 feet 1 inch, tall and 75 kg, 165 pounds, with black hair and blue eyes. Arms, legs, spinal cord, and shoulder blades of the subject appear to have been replaced with artificial versions of unknown make and metal. Subject only takes notice of this when it is pointed out, and states that it has no knowledge of how, why, or when these replacements took place, stating it had had them as long as it could remember. There is a symbol engraved into the forehead of the subject, which appears to be of Sumerian origin. Symbol has of yet been untranslated, and subject appears distressed when the symbol is mentioned at all, refusing to speak on it. Subject does need to eat and drink on a regular basis, but is strictly carnivorous owing to its effect on plant-based items. SCP-073, who refers to itself as CAIN, is generally polite and genial to all who speak to it, though it has been described as being cold and somewhat mechanical in its speech. It is very helpful, and enjoys aiding personnel in their daily actions, whatever they may be. It has highly detailed knowledge of ancient to recent events in history, and most commonly spoken languages in the world, including ones that have since died out. Subject has professed to having a photographic memory, remembering word for word all text in an 800-page dictionary that was flicked through in a minute and a half. It has scored above average in all intelligence tests given to it. SCP-073's presence is inimical to any and all life grown in soil, causing death to any such life within a 20 meter radius. any land SCP-073 has walked on, and any within the 20 meter radius, becomes barren as all anaerobic bacteria dies, rendering the soil incapable of supporting life until new bacteria are introduced. Anything that is derived from soil-grown life, such as wood and paper, immediately rots and disintegrates upon touch of SCP-073. Further affected derivatives include anything hydroponically grown. Violence directed towards SCP-073 reflects any damage inflicted on SCP-073 directly back onto the attacker, although SCP-073 visibly remains unharmed. This applies to any damage directed at SCP-073. Attempts to get tissue and blood samples have proven futile. When the procedure was initiated, personnel carrying out the action felt the sensation of whatever was applied to SCP-073, and wound up with a sample of their own blood or tissue, despite the fact that all actions were directed solely at SCP-073. Indirect damage through a medium also results in the person perpetrating the action receiving the wounds caused. Although SCP-073 receives no actual harm from damage to its person, it has stated that it still feels the pain of the action, and has politely asked researchers to abstain from overly harmful actions to its person. Additional notes: SCP-073 was found in the New York Police Department in 19, having been taken in after subject had been found amidst the bodies of several violent gang members. SCP-073 told police members that the gang had attempted to make sport of it, but became angry and attempted to kill SCP-073, resulting in their own demise. SCP-073 was incarcerated, and was deemed a John Doe when NYPD could not find any information on it. SCP-073 came to the attention of the Foundation through a routine inspection of John Does, and was subsequently released into our custody. Addendum 073-1. In light of SCP-073's indestructible nature, photographic memory, and general will to please, High Command have deemed that all information is to be backed up on SCP-073, ensuring it is not lost in the event of a catastrophe. While this action has met with mixed responses, SCP-073 has agreed and sworn itself to secrecy on its part. Addendum 073-2. When information concerning SCP-076 was brought to the attention of SCP-073 for backing up, subjects showed familiarity with the information, although was disinclined to adding to it, despite the fact that it stated that it already knew all about SCP-076. It then stated it would be better for all parties involved that it not meet SCP-076. Addendum 073-3. Examination of the unidentified metal on SCP-073 has suggested that it is beryllium bronze, a metal that has been documented as being utilized by various anomalous cultures and entities. Most notably, beryllium bronze is a component found in SCP-1216, SCP-1427, SCP-2481, and SCP-2711. In light of this discovery, the Foundation began working in an attempt to trace the origin of beryllium bronze and how it initially spread throughout the world. When prompted, SCP-073 was able to provide information that suggests that beryllium bronze originated in the Middle East, though the exact point of origin has yet to be determined. Further research into the origin of beryllium bronze is currently ongoing.
SCP-5015 Special Containment Procedures. All newly discovered instances of SCP-5015 are to be kept in a standard storage locker in the Restricted Containment section of Site-11's Archaeological Ward. Description: SCP-5015 is a small object, constructed from petrified clay, which resembles a simple compass rose. Several thaumaturgic markings, appearing to be of ancient Greek origin, are carved into SCP-5015. The meanings of these markings are unknown. SCP-5015 is believed to be a device designed for navigation towards SCP-5015-A, an extra-dimensional space believed to be the inspiration for myths regarding Daedalus's labyrinth. SCP-5015 is comprised of 5 pieces, designated SCP-5015-1 through -5, with SCP-5015 1 through -4 being the 4 pointers of the compass rose and SCP-5015 5 being the central piece. The 5 pieces can function separately or together. When separate, the tips of each of the corner pieces in the middle of the central piece will, through unknown means, glow a faint cyan. However, when together, the glow of each component will be distinct and will indicate the direction in which the user should continue to find the nearest entrance to SCP-5015-A. Exploration. Mobile Task Force Zeta-9 was sent into SCP-5015-A via an entrance which Foundation thaumatologist Dr. Sphere found in the ruins outside of Luxor, Egypt. Plus MTF Exploration Log. Item of Interest Number 1. A journal was discovered during Zeta-9's exploration into SCP-5015-A. A digital transcription of its contents has been posted for convenience. The journal is being kept in the written archive of Site-11 and is scheduled for thaumaturgic testing within the next month. Plus digital transcription of journal. Addendum. Notice to all Foundation personnel working with projects related to SCP-5015 or SCP-5015-A, all remaining Level 3 personnel or below that are scheduled to work on SCP-5015 are to be rescheduled immediately. Members of MTF Zeta-9 that have worked in or around SCP-5015-A are to report to Site Command. All non-Foundation personnel near or around SCP-5015-A entrance are to be immediately redirected, or if necessary, terminated. All known non-Foundation personnel with knowledge regarding SCP-5015 are to be immediately terminated. All Foundation personnel under the Eye-Keepers Protocol 1 Level 3 and below are to be given amnestics immediately.
Item hash SCP-1000. Object Class, Keter. Special Containment Procedures. All media reports related to SCP-1000 are to be examined for potential verifiability. All organizations and individuals investigating SCP-1000's existence are to be kept under surveillance by Mobile Task Force Zeta-1000 and discredited or administered amnestics. All physical signs of SCP-1000's existence must be retrieved and kept in Foundation custody, and replaced with decoy items if necessary. Alleged sightings of SCP-1000 must always be investigated by MTF Zeta-1000, however trivial the claim. Absolutely no contact with wild or captive instances of SCP-1000 is allowed without prior approval by Director Jones. Any interaction between SCP-1000 and humans, including Foundation personnel, must be reported to Director Jones immediately. Description: SCP-1000 is a nocturnal, omnivorous ape, classified in the Hominini branch along with genera Pan and Homo. Adults range in size from 1.5 to 3 meters, 5 to 10 feet, in height, and weigh between 90 and 270 kilograms, 200 to 600 pounds. They have gray, brown, black, red, and occasionally white fur. They possess large eyes with good vision, a pronounced brow ridge, and a sagittal crest on the forehead similar to that of the gorilla, but present in both sexes. Their intelligence is on par with that of Pan troglodytes, the common chimpanzee. SCP-1000 evolved alongside Homo sapiens, existing contemporaneously with proto-humans and humans in large numbers until 10,000 to 15,000 years ago, when an extinction event eliminated all but 1 to 5% of their population. This event was triggered by SCP-1000 contracting an anomalous pseudo-disease classified as SCP-1000-F1. This disease is passed on at the genetic level and affects every present-day instance of SCP-1000. The majority of SCP-1000 instances are born immune to the effect. Those who are not born immune quickly die. The effect of SCP-1000-F1 is as follows: any hominid, including humans, chimpanzees, bonobos, and non-immune instances of SCP-1000, that directly or indirectly observes any instance of SCP-1000 has a minimum 2% chance of being instantly killed through anomalous means via permanent cessation of brain function. This percentage is cumulative, and the longer a human views SCP-1000, the higher the chance of instantaneous death increases, at a rate of +1% chance per 20 minutes of viewing. This effect varies between individual members of SCP-1000 species, with some individuals carrying a death chance of 90%. The effect is also produced by dead individuals, though small fur samples do not exhibit the effect. Known means of preventing this effect are small-scale only and include: redacted, see attached documentation, Level 3 clearance required. Because of SCP-1000's close relation to humanity, it is considered likely that SCP-1000-F1 could eventually transfer to human carriers. Any instance of SCP-1000 finding its way to a major population center could constitute a class end-of-the-world scenario with a minimum death toll of redacted and possible extinction of humanity. Fortunately, SCP-1000 appears to instinctively avoid human contact. It is not currently feasible to exterminate SCP-1000 entirely. The highest known population concentrations of SCP-1000 are at present located in the Pacific Northwest region of North America and the Himalayan mountain range in Asia. As of / these populations remain extant. SCP-1000's presence and data expunged have also been documented within the past 5 years on every continent. All known significant populations of SCP-1000 located near human population centers have been eliminated. SCP-1000 came to the attention of the Foundation via contact by Dr. Franz M. in 14 with the Children of the Sun, who identified themselves as outcast members of the Serpent's Hand. This group has since been completely destroyed by the Foundation due to their reluctance to surrender information about SCP-1000, SCP, and SCP, since reclassified as SCP-1000 and SCP-1000. Remaining members have either joined the Foundation or have gone into hiding, presumably as members of the Serpent's Hand. Weapons, tools, and other unique pseudo-technological resources in possession of the organization have been classified as SCP-1000-001 through SCP-1000. These resources have been made use of by the Foundation in multiple instances. For a full list, see Document 1000-3534-Y, Level 3 clearance required. Access to surviving ex-members of the Children of the Sun is restricted to personnel with clearance Level 4 1000 unless given direct authorization for contact by Director Jones. Further information is available to personnel with clearance Level 3 1000 or above. Personnel with clearance Level 3 1000 or above are required to read Document Alpha 1596-1000. Addendum 1466-X. Update to Special Containment Procedures. As of SCP-1000 Special Containment Procedures no longer include Procedure 516 Lumina. Data expunged indicates that SCP-1000 may be developing a resistance to the sonic element. Data expunged will not develop further, so that Procedure 516 Lumina can still be used in emergency situations. Investigation into alternate means of reliably keeping SCP-1000 away from human population centers is underway. Whether SCP-1000 resistance to Procedure 516 Lumina was calculated, and as such may be a sign of SCP-1000, redacted, or coincidental, by chance of natural species variation, is not known at this time. Addendum 1000-056-D. Instances of SCP-1000 have tried to make contact with Foundation personnel on multiple occasions. Most of these attempts at contact have data expunged, untranslated, though recent attempts show that some instances of SCP-1000 are capable of communicating in English. Display Ancillary Anomaly Reports. Log 1000 at 065-X1. The following is a rough translation of recent SCP-1000 attempt at communication with Foundation personnel on // see attached documentation. We forgive you. Given choice for now, not forever. Let us back in.
Item hash, SCP-1009. Object Class, Keter. Special Containment Procedures. The area surrounding SCP-1009 is to be walled off to a distance of 3 meters around it. Speakers are located at every 6 meters around the perimeter of the area, each constantly broadcasting tones louder than 80 decibels. These speakers are to be checked for functionality daily. Small neon tape flags are to be installed clearly around the edge of SCP-1009 at small intervals. If, during daily monitoring, an area is found clear of flags, containment should be re-evaluated. Those performing examinations should wear ear protection to prevent hearing loss. In case of power failure, 2 backup generators of different make are attached to the current system, which should be maintained as alongside the speaker level of containment, and which will automatically activate in succession following the deactivation of the first. In case of complete electrical failure such as an EMP variety strike, a backup system consisting of metal spheres and aluminum sheeting has been installed, which will automatically activate if speakers become disengaged for over 5 minutes. This will allow between 45 minutes and 1 hour to re-establish containment, or to manually reset the secondary rainstick containment component. Re-establishing containment is a top priority in the case of outages. Description: SCP-1009 is an anomalous area of land approximately 45 by 30 meters and irregularly shaped. This area will expand, converting all foreign materials surrounding it to further areas of SCP-1009 chemically and structurally irrelevant to the original materials and structures. SCP-1009 expands at a rate of 0.8700 meters per hour. Growth of SCP-1009 may be entirely restrained by loud noises. Any sound over 60 decibels will stop growth in the immediate area, currently maintained with mechanical speakers, but voices, instruments, and natural noise are all equally effective. If entirely unrestrained, SCP-1009 would break containment entirely in 3.45 hours, cover 4.044 square kilometers in 24 hours, and expand to 1,000 kilometers after 26 days. The environment within SCP-1009 appears natural, but is not composed of Earth-like flora or fauna. For a complete environmental analysis, see Document 1009-A40. In general, flora is in bright, non-Earth-like colors, and is larger than most Earth flora. Analysis of biota indicates the area is equivalent to a forest. However, neither invertebrate nor vertebrate animal life is naturally occurring within the area. There is no effect on humans within entering SCP-1009, allowing the taking of numerous samples and measurements. Addendum A. SCP-1009-A is the corpse of an unusual creature found in SCP-1009. SCP-1009-A was seen exiting the area and was shot by a guard, who has been reprimanded for his hasty actions. The creature resembles a squirrel or monkey with large ears, and appears to be a mammal. The body is currently stored in the Site-8 deep freeze, and may be requisitioned for study from Dr. Light. Addendum B. Dr. Vox has proposed that SCP-1009 could be allowed to expand around a source of noise, creating a circle of non-anomalous terrain within the area, and that this might have a different effect on humans within it. Necessary documentation was approved, and D-18899 was selected as a subject, hogtied, and placed with a 70 decibel battery-operated speaker at the edge of SCP-1009. Some of the containment speakers were permitted to be moved in order to allow growth. Growth did occur around the buzzer, over the course of 7 hours. The D-class was seen to experience typical fear and panic at the beginning of the test. However, in the area surrounding the buzzer, large spike-like plants grew to surround and form a dome over the top of the area, which is unusual. Growth within SCP-1009 has never otherwise responded to outside stimulus. After 12 hours, the battery on the buzzer failed, and the non-anomalous zone was taken over by the area. At this point, cameras in the containment area record an unusual event when the circle of normal terrain shrank over D-18899. D-18899 disappeared and was replaced by a large, dark-colored animal resembling a deer or caribou, free of restraint, which broke through the ring of branches using its head, then proceeded to circle the area of containment, knocking against walls and damaging 3 speakers with its hooves and head.
Cameras had difficulty picking up the entity's image. The photo included is the clearest available. At this point, the attending researcher, Dr. V, radioed for help while grabbing a fire extinguisher and entering the containment area. Dr. V managed to drive the animal off, and it ran into the center of SCP-1009, and apparently disappeared completely after leaving the sight range of both cameras and Dr. V. As far as can be determined, SCP-1009-B no longer exists and never exited containment. Tracking analysis indicates its footprints disappeared near the center of the area as it leapt over a route. Containment was re-established, and capture protocol set up in case further creatures appear within SCP-1009.
Item hash, SCP-2056. Object Class, Euclid. Special Containment Procedures, SCP-2056 is to be held in a forested enclosure 1 square kilometer in size. Perimeter fencing is to be constructed of concrete walls 4 meters in height, supplemented with electrified fencing to discourage approach by SCP-2056. Trees within the enclosure are to be examined on a monthly basis by 1 Foundation botanist, escorted by no fewer than 4 security personnel armed with gas-powered firearms loaded with 10 mg of torphine cartridges. Any trees determined to need replacement due to desiccation are to be marked and replaced with transplanted specimens at the discretion of head researcher Knowles. The enclosure is to be guarded at all times by no less than 4 security personnel armed with gas-powered firearms loaded with 10 mg of torphine cartridges. Testing is to be approved only by the head researcher, currently Dr. Knowles. Description: SCP-2056 is a bipedal humanoid, superficially resembling mammals from the Primatomorpha order. It measures approximately 2.5 meters in height, weighing approximately 180 kilograms. The object's entire body is covered in coarse, dark brown hair. DNA testing of this hair has not yet yielded a match to any known order of mammal. SCP-2056 has retractable claws approximately 20 centimeters in length. It possesses no notable resistance to physical trauma. The eyes of SCP-2056 are highly reflective, with no visible pupil or cornea. SCP-2056 lacks a jaw. Its mouth is funnel-shaped and lined with pointed teeth, similar to members of the order Petromyzoniformes, lamprey. Prior to capture by the Foundation, evidence in the surrounding environment indicates that SCP-2056 feeds on large trees and their surrounding soil in the area by latching onto them with its mouth, though the biological process through which it extracts nutrition is still being researched. Affected trees and soil were left in advanced stages of desiccation and malnourishment, and survived in only 27% of cases. The behavior of SCP-2056 suggests increased intelligence in comparison with primates, and displays an antagonistic behavior pattern towards humans, although not exclusively physical aggression. By default, this behavior towards humans includes generating sounds such as faint human laughter via a form of ventriloquism. How SCP-2056 is able to generate these sounds given its biology is unknown. Testing indicates that a lack of stress response from the subject, theorized to be desired by SCP-2056, will cause it to escalate to violence. Addendum: after extended time in captivity, SCP-2056 no longer engages in the behavior detailed above, instead retreating into the enclosure whenever security personnel or researchers enter. It will, however, still attempt to defend itself if approached too closely. When alone in its enclosure, SCP-2056 will generally remain stationary and lethargic. SCP-2056 will also sporadically vocalize, appearing to sing for minutes at a time before falling silent. The purpose of this behavior has not yet been determined, but is theorized to be in response to its extended incarceration. Recovery Log: SCP-2056 was first brought to the attention of the Foundation in 19 after reports of missing persons in the area of Mount Rainier National Park in Washington were publicly declared to be anomalous in nature by several elders of the local Native American Salish First Nations. 3 Foundation agents were dispatched to perform an investigation, posing as journalists covering the disappearances.
Item hash, SCP-2014. Object Class, Euclid. Special Containment Procedures, SCP-2014 is to be kept in an artificial habitat appropriate for geckos in Site-27. It should be cared for as specified in Care Sheet 2014-A, derived from open-source material on Eublephares macularis. SCP-2014 may use its skateboard for recreational purposes if good behavior is maintained, although it must be kept under surveillance with anesthesiologists standing by in case it attempts to breach containment. Description: SCP-2014 is an adult male gecko belonging to the Eublephares macularis species, measuring 8.5 centimeters in length. SCP-2014 is physically indistinguishable from other members of its species. SCP-2014 is sapient and possesses telekinetic abilities. It can use these abilities to manipulate objects from afar. SCP-2014 is capable of manipulating any object within 24 meters of itself, regardless of whether or not it is visible. SCP-2014 identifies itself as Jar Magoth, an extra-dimensional entity suspected to have been responsible for creating multiple cults and causing several crimes, such as murder, theft, and indecent exposure. SCP-2014 came to the attention of the Foundation on the 21st of February, 1998, when one of the contestants in a skateboarding championship in Los Angeles, California was seen performing physically impossible stunts. It was later discovered that the contestant had performed an occult ritual in order to summon the consciousness of Jar Magoth into the body of his pet gecko. SCP-2014 was kept inside the pocket of the contestant, and used its telekinetic powers to give him an advantage in the championship. All witnesses were given Class B amnestics.